بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. All right, welcome everyone. Thank you. I'm going to call him Sagher Uncle because that's what I always call him, and everyone in the community seems to call him that.
Yes.
You all can call him Sagher Uncle or Dr. Razvi, or I don't know if you have any other preference.
Sagher is what some of the most people call
Yeah.
me. Sagher is fine too.
All right, so Sagher Uncle is a community member here in Chicago, and I've known him for almost maybe 20 years now. And our families have been very close, and we've benefited a lot from him. So he is, I sent out a bio to all of you. He is a retired university professor. And so that's part of what I'd like him to talk about. We can ask him about. But he also has a lot of extracurricular activities that are very interesting, and I think they can add a lot of benefit to your perspectives. The participants here, Sagher Uncle, are some of them you know. Some are my children. Say Suleiman's son is here. They're all between like upper high school to college.
Perfect.
And the idea is like they're going to have to choose career paths and things to study. And I think the more information they can have, especially on traditionally unconventional paths, the better they can make those selections, and maybe something will pique their interest. So yeah, so I'd like to ask you about your maybe your university experience, and then also some of the other things that you do and have done, and we'll get some advice out of you, and the kids will also ask questions as the questions occur to them. Yeah, so you want to maybe start out with your academic background. How did what did you do exactly, and what was that experience like in the university?
First off, Assalamu alaikum to everybody, and thanks for having me. It's a real pleasure to come and share my experiences and so on. What I thought I'd do this evening is keep it short. Most professors talk for 50 minutes. I'm going to try to cut that short. I'm going to try to cut that short. I'm going to take you from how I got to where I got to, and give you some of that introduction. And so there were several roadblocks on the way. And I want to emphasize that roadblocks is a common happening, and you should not be discouraged by it. You should move on to another path and establish that path and have an alternate always available so you can continue and don't give up. There will be roadblocks. So how did I become a professor? Why did I become a professor of the subject that I chose? As a kid, 12, 13 years old, I used to raise a lot of chickens. And we used to propagate ornamental plants and sell those plants for revenue for the family. And so that's how I got involved in farming, and said, oh, well, maybe I should consider farming as a background or educational background. And I really wasn't sure. Wanted to go to medical school, didn't get into medical school. Well, you got to choose another path now. So I got into the College of Agriculture. This is back in India, back in Hyderabad. And it's a 4-year program in agriculture. It's a broad-based agriculture. And while I was in college, I realized we learned about soil, we learned about water, and we learned about air. Now, we also learned about food production, animal production. And I saw how interconnected these resources of Allah were given to us for our human survival. And I asked the question, how long is this going to last? If the population keeps increasing, can this earth support the food production for all these people? So now we have to start to supplement the food production with good nutrition for the soil, for the plant, by adding fertilizers to the soil. And when I was growing up, fertilizers were just a brand new thing. And so we increased our production by adding chemicals to the land. We also added some chemicals to kill the bugs and the diseases. And that hit me very hard. I felt that here we are, there's only so many resources on the earth, the soil, the water, and the air. And if we continue to add chemicals and add our waste to these three main resources that we have, we're not making any more new soil. We're not making any more new land. We're not making any more new water. We cannot destroy matter. So, and the air, if we can't breathe quality air, we're going to suffocate and die. If we don't have quality water, we cannot survive. All living beings need water. So I felt that that's the focus I should take. And we all generate waste. If you did not eat the food that you put on your plate, now that's waste. If you bought something and it does not have any useful life for you anymore, that's a waste. So everything that is ever made, manufactured by humans, or grows out of the land will eventually become waste. Now, where do we put this waste? We want to get rid of it. We like to live tidy lives, and we need to get rid of it. Hey, a garbage man comes, takes the waste. You flush down the toilet, and the waste goes down the toilet. You wash your dishes in the sink, that waste goes down the sewer line. And you're breathing air in, oxygen in, carbon dioxide out. Carbon dioxide is a waste product. And so we're constantly adding these waste products to our land and to our water. So I said, well, you know what? I alone cannot solve this. I need an army to solve the problem. And how do you create an army? You're a teacher. You teach a whole bunch of people. And that's how you start to have them propagate the information that you've given. And so that's the direction I took. Got into a PhD program at the University of Wisconsin. And I was going to be a researcher. And when I realized what researchers do, it was pretty boring. It was interesting, but it was boring because you could not impact people's lives so much. The research that you would do 10 years, 15 years down the road, maybe somebody will pick it up and say, hey, I can take this and add to it. So one day, just by chance, a professor came up to me and said, hey, can you teach in one of my lab sections? That class was 250 students. And of the 250 students, there were 10 lab sections, 25 students each. And I asked him if I was going to get paid. He said, no, it's volunteer. It's for extra credit. Okay. I said, fine, let me try it. Never done any teaching. So he said, this is your section. These are your 25 students. Random, I did not choose them. I didn't know who was enrolled in that class. So I went to the lab and taught the lab. I realized how much I did not know, because you need to know the content to be able to teach. And that semester, when I taught these students, 25 students, they seemed to take a lot of interest. And this was a lab on soils, dirt. Now, how much can you teach about dirt, right? And this was semester long, 15 lab periods, 15 different topics. And these were experiments that students would carry out and you had to explain to them and so on. These are pretty much freshmen. And went through the semester. At the end of the semester, the professor came up to me and said, you've done a fantastic job. I said, how so? I just did my job. He said, the 25 students that you had, their class average was 20 points above the rest of the class average. What did you do different? I said, I don't know if I did anything different. He says, you're a born teacher, you should become a professor. So here I was, a week later, I got somebody came up to my office and said, hey, we have a vacancy at this university. Would you be interested in teaching? Grabbed the opportunity, and 37 years went by. And I've enjoyed every bit of it. It was such a beautiful ride. It was such a gratifying career. I just cannot explain it. And I thank Allah for this. And in the process, each year, I would have had 250, minimum 250 students in my class during the lecture. And then I would teach most of the labs, and I'd have an outdoor classroom. Every course I taught had a lab. And I believed that hands-on teaching was very important, because when I started out teaching, I asked the question, why would students want to come to this campus? Why does a student want a BS degree? And some of you can answer that question for me. Why would you want a degree? Oh, because mom and dad said so, because everybody does it, right? Well, my approach was very different. So these people are investing their money and their time. It's just like doing a business or investing in stocks. You invest your money and you want some return in the process. And the return has to be better than the time and the money you invested. They want a job. Some of you may have worked, and if you did work, the first job that you got, that was a day that was the greatest day of your life, if you're looking forward to that job. And I could see that these students, if they got employed, they were going to be very happy, right? So I would have touched their lives in a way that they probably hadn't even imagined. Now, this is where choosing a career comes in. You have to, if you're going to school with the intent of just getting the education, well, you go on the internet. ChatGPT will teach you anything you want to be taught. How accurate is it? If I ask you to fix something, you're not going to be able to fix something because you just read it. Hands-on becomes very, very, very important. So that is the approach I took. And with all the students that I had, I would know them by their names. I don't remember them anymore, but my reputation was such that I touched their lives in such a way that I could place not the 100,000 students, but those that majored within my field. I did place every one of them. And they were so happy. They stay in touch with me and so on. So it's a really, really gratifying feeling. Now, I felt that this was a perfect way of disseminating ideas. The courses I taught were a very broad range. I taught courses in soil science. I taught courses in water treatment and making drinking water out of polluted water, treating polluted water, landfills, landfill design, recycling, composting, and water, soil chemistry, soil physics, and so on. So to teach that at that level and that many different subjects with a lab, you had to have the background. And fortunately, I spent more time in school trying to get that background because I wanted to be wanted. I've never applied for a job in my life. And that is a fact. They came to me. And that's what I would like you folks to get yourself in a position where you do not have to worry about whether I'm going to get this job or not get this job. You want them to come to you and pick you over others, choose you over others. And the only way you're going to do that is by doing certain things while you're in school. And so what I'm going to do now is talk about my position and talk about how what a typical professor does and why, if you're considering this, this might be something to keep in mind. And I'll talk about the positives, I'll talk about the negatives. And then what I want to do is spend maybe 5 minutes or so in talking about how you can take advantage of your 4 years in college, 3 years in college, or 5 years in college, and how you can prepare yourself. I'm not talking which subject, which courses. I'm talking about very general things. How you can take up that opportunity while you're in school to take advantage of every little bit of what the school has to offer in terms of resources. So, so the premise here is to start out saying, what do the students want? They want to get a job eventually. And so you need to train them to get a job and what skills they need to get a job. So I'm going to come back to that in a bit, but first I'm going to talk about the highlights of the profession of teaching, especially at a university. There's a thing called academic freedom. Academic freedom is simply the ability to think openly without any restrictions. You can think of any idea that you have and be able to communicate that with your students. And you want to broaden the student's mind. It could be a controversial topic. That's okay. Controversial topics are okay. You don't get fired because your boss isn't looking over your shoulder. Not because you're trying to hide from your boss, but what you're trying to do is open up minds, open up the young people's minds. And that is a very gratifying feeling where you can do anything, literally anything you want within constraints, of course, and start to open up that mind, critical thinking of any given subject that you're teaching. So that to me was an opportunity to influence young minds. And so you, if you're a teacher, whether it's a high school teacher, or whether it's a grade school teacher, that's what you will be doing. But then you have to be open-minded. You should allow the students to discuss things openly. I let my students jump in and disagree with me. Sometimes I would purposely say something very controversial to start the discussion. And that's okay. You know, we go through a discussion, they argue. Others learn from this. I learn from them. And that makes me a better professor. And so that academic freedom is something that you have. You may not have that much of freedom in high school level, but or grade school level as a teacher, but certainly you have that at a university level or a college level. The other thing is you're gratified by how many people you have placed. Put them in the real world. And when you place these people, they're going to go out there and do good. They're taking your ideas and adding to it. And then sometimes those ideas come back to the professors. So I was in touch with students all the time. And not all professors are this way. There are professors that are focused only on research, and there are professors focused on teaching. They both have their advantages and disadvantages. My focus was on teaching, but I also had research. And research is taking a problem and finding a solution. And every situation is different. Every problem is different. It's unique to that situation. And we now need to find a solution to it. And when you find that solution, that solution has to be acceptable by society or whoever's the practitioner. And that solution has to be economically feasible. If I have to spend $1 million just to get a car to get from here to there, that is not an economic way of getting yourself transported from here to there. You could do that with a $500 used beater, right? So you find solutions that are economically feasible and technically sound. And so when you're doing this research and do hands-on stuff, not book learning. Book learning has to be there too, but when you do that, it just opens up opportunities for students. They bring in ideas. I don't know what experiences each person has had. Those experiences are expressed openly. When you work with individuals, you do not underestimate the intelligence. Everybody is very intelligent that's coming to college. They just have to use that intelligence properly. And as you folks go through close classes, you need to tap that resource that's there, the professor, and take advantage of what they have to say, what they have to show, what they have to share. But if you are an introvert, you need to work towards being a little more social, being a little more open. I'm going to get to that, how to come about that. And I'll open it up to questions as well. All of my research was hands-on. I did not want my results to wait 10 years to be utilized. Example, I'll give you an example. The way where I was teaching, it was a area where potatoes grow. And Orida Potatoes, a potato manufacturing processing plant, would process 200,000 pounds of potatoes a day. They made tater tots and French fries. And they had a lot of waste. And they used to just go dump it on agricultural land and say it'll rot away, it'll decompose, and it'll be done. And one day I approached him and says, hey, you know what? I can make ethanol out of it, alcohol out of it, to use as gasoline. And we started a project. I had 2 students that started the project. And within 3 months, we got a $400,000 grant, simply based on a basic research, and started to work on other ways to convert to ethanol. And of course, now it's a product that they could sell, where they were given money to throw away the waste. They were making money on that waste. That's the kind of research I focused on. The other advantage I felt was you are always in an intellectual environment. You're working with professors all the time. All these people have PhDs or a master's degree, and you learn so much from them. The interaction, they all think differently. Some of them are very idealistic. Some of them have, like a history professor. We're not making new history now. We got history from way back when that they teach. And nothing against history majors or history professors, but in the science field that I was, you had to create new knowledge now as it was needed. So that interaction, intellectual interaction, was very, very rewarding. And it's like you folks, 5 Malanas get together, you discuss certain topics that are related to the community, you feed off of each other and get ideas. The other thing that was rewarding, because of the academic freedom that we had, I created new majors. Somebody has a civil engineering major, somebody has a biochemistry major. Likewise, within the soils program, I created several sub-majors and a new major in waste management. Where do you get an opportunity to do that? Now, when I did that, I also then did a couple of buildings for the campus and got funds from the federal government, worked with the governor, worked with the senators to get funding. And one of the buildings was $10.5 million. One of the buildings was $4.5 million. And that $4.5 million was dedicated entirely to my program. There's only one office in there, and that was mine. The rest of it was labs, student teaching labs, and so on. We did everything in a house. We had treatment plants inside the building. And so that was very rewarding. You have to take the initiative. And this is where I think as an undergraduate, as you're going through, it's not about so many credits. It's not about grades. It's about taking advantage of the resources that are there and making sure that you can get involved. And nobody's going to turn you down if you want to get involved. As a student, they will give you an opportunity to get involved. So new programs were created that were focused on placement, focused on research. But believe me, I still get butterflies when I go into the classroom. I'm nervous. I got adrenaline flowing. That's a good sign. Otherwise, you take yourself for granted and you don't do such a good job. And when you go in there and start to lecture and the light bulb turns on, I didn't know this worked that way. When a student comes out and tells you this, you know that you have sparked something there. And that is very, very rewarding. The other advantages that you have are flexibility. You can set your own schedule. You can start class at 8 o'clock in the morning or teach at 6:30 in the evening till 9 o'clock or so. So that flexibility of scheduling classes allows you to do research, allows you to travel, spend time with your family if you had to. I was fortunate. I lived 2 blocks from work. I'd come home, eat lunch, and then go back for a 6:30 in the evening class, very leisurely, and get things done. Students like that too. So that flexibility was just tremendous. You got winter break, holidays, spring break, holidays, summer break, holidays. Now, if you're a family man and you've got children and they're going to school, they also have a winter break and a spring break, and a summer break, and you are with them. So it enhances your family life, the quality of life. And you can ask my children, we travel all over the place whenever there's a break. We planned it that way. We got in the car and left town. And that's another advantage. Travel opportunities overseas. I always encourage my students to have some kind of international experience. And you folks, as you're going through this, seek out programs that you can go overseas. I'm such a strong believer in how much you learn when you go out and see what others are doing. If I had the opportunity to take students in Germany, Poland, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, France, Switzerland, Costa Rica, New Zealand, Fiji, Australia. Who gets to do that? Children travel some of the times. And they grew because of it. So those are some perks that you have. And what else? We are working with the same age group day in and day out. 37 years working with 18 to 24-year-olds. I think like them. And over the years, the generations think differently. I picked that up. My children grew up. I could relate to them because I was in with the slang. I was in with the customs. I was in the way they were thinking. There were no cell phones till 15 years ago, perhaps. And how did they communicate with each other? Now, as soon as a student comes out of the classroom, they're texting each other, or in the classroom, they're texting each other, and so on. So things change, and but I could bring that back home. Finally, I think public service. You're serving the community. Now, I don't necessarily care if it's a Shia community or a Muslim community. It's the community that we live in. We are part of that community. And it is a very satisfying feeling to serve the community. So I think I've listed a few things that professor would do and enjoy. Are there any disadvantages? Yes. There's always politics everywhere, in any job. Doesn't matter whether you're in a private sector, if you're a physician, if you're an engineer, if you're a reporter, it does not matter. There'll be people who will feel jealous of you if you do well, especially if you're not white-skinned. And you should not let that part bother you because you cannot change that. But what you have to do is be humble. Try to help people out. Let them compete with you. You're smarter than that. You need to be smarter than that. You have to be better than the best. There's no other option. And when doing that and you're humble, people will respect you. You build a reputation, and a reputation is what will carry you through. So it is a very glamorous job. It's a very satisfying job. People envy you, people respect you, and so on. But you have to earn that respect. Salaries and pay is not anything to write home about. You can survive, but you're not going to get rich. Okay, so just keep that in mind. So you need to set a side gig of some kind. And my side gig was to consult with private companies and consult with governments. And I'd have projects that they would pay me for, and I would get the work done for them in addition to my teaching. So anybody, doesn't matter what your field is, have a side gig. Side gig simply means you have something else as a source of income or source of enjoyment or a source of keeping yourself busy. You should have that. Things have changed. Now, many of the courses are virtual. Many of the courses are hybrid. So you don't even have to go to the classroom. You don't have any contact with the professor. I think we're losing out. The student is losing out in the process. That contact, that interaction with the students. Virtual is fine, but when you're in a classroom, you see body language, you see expressions, and so on. And you try to convince somebody else with your ideas. They try to convince you of their ideas. And you learn to respect people's opinions. And that is going to be missed in the future because I think universities are moving away from this. I don't know when schools are going to move away from it. I don't think it's going to happen right now. Okay, I'm going to stop there and see if you have any questions related to the career as a teacher or a professor. And then I can take 5 minutes to give you some thoughts as to how to shine as a student to become a valuable employee of any given employer. Doesn't matter what your field is.
Hmm.
So let's open it up to questions and feel free. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. Any of you have questions on teaching? Yeah, Hamid?
So you mentioned that you did the consulting alongside teaching. I was wondering if like consulting, because like for government sectors and private sectors, I feel like that could be a lot of work, especially if it's related to waste management and things like that. So how did you time manage doing consulting projects along with your teaching career and research and all those things?
Here's the argument I always used. Many of my colleagues did not do consulting. My argument was, if I consult, I know what the real world problems are. And if I found a solution for them, I can bring that problem and the solution to the classroom. That makes the product student much better student because I have just gained this knowledge of the real world. I know what it costs to fix a problem. I know what a certain machine costs. I know how much labor it takes because whoever is going to hire you to be a consultant, they want the most economic solution, maybe scientifically sound. If it's not economically feasible, they're not going to adopt it. They may hire you, but they won't hire you back. So you have to find financially sound solutions for the problem. And this is one thing. American schools, high schools, do not teach you how to manage money and how to think of everything in terms of money. I'm not saying be greedy and think only money. The whole world If you have money, you can do a lot of things. And you need to think in those terms. You are going to college for 4 years. If you're paying $20,000 a year, let's say you're paying $20,000 in tuition, 4 years, $80,000. When will you ever recover those $80,000? Think about it that way, right? If I get it done in 3 years, I'm only $60,000 in the hole. Now I can recover it, right? So think efficiency in your life. If you think efficiency in your life, and don't be stingy, don't be a Scrooge. Think what makes more sense. If your parents are paying for it, it's still money, right? If you're going to get a loan, it's still your money. You'll have to pay it back. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to drag yourself out 5 years or 6 years. And there's nothing wrong with that either. You may choose a major and decide you don't like it. It's perfectly fine. Change your major. It's better to be able to enjoy your profession and do well in it, because if you're happy, you will do well. If you choose the wrong profession, you're going to be miserable for the rest of your life. How did I manage it? My boss would say, "Hey, where are you today?" "Oh, I'm over here consulting." How's that going to help the student? It says, this is how it's going to help the student. If I do consulting work, I not only bring the money in to the university and then pay the student to do some other work for me. In the process, the student is learning. In the process, I have helped a company. Because of this work, there's 140,000 faculty and staff in the University of Wisconsin system. 10 of those 140,000 are awarded the distinguished professor rank, and I was one of them. Why? Because I helped the industries become economically more feasible, especially with the waste disposal, where I had a door manufacturer that made fire doors. Inside the fire door, they have this core that is fireproof. It's limestone ground up like a cement, and then they put a wooden panel on it. They were spending over $150,000 a year to send that stuff to a landfill. They called me up and says, "Can you find a solution?" I found a solution for them. They were selling it. Going from $150,000 in expenses to selling it and making money off. They're going to do this for the rest of their lives. It cost them $10,000 to do the research and the consulting work. You had to go convince the EPA authorities to accept that. And when it comes from a professor, it's more likely to be accepted. And you have the data to prove it. So yes, consulting can be done on the side. All universities allow you to do that. Now, if you're skimping on your job and just focusing on the consulting, that's not. Did I answer the question?
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other?
Anyone else?
Yeah, thank you.
You have another one? You have another question?
Oh, I just said thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. You're welcome. So as you go into the university system, how many of you are already in the university? One.
Rashid and Yahya are both in college, and
Oh.
Musa is in college. At least 3 of them. Any of the others? I think it's just the 3.
Yeah, and this may help the people who are not in college, but also help the people. I know Yasser is still a freshman, and you have to focus on what you want to do and be flexible. When I say be flexible, if there's an opportunity to take classes outside of what you want to do, and just have a slight interest in it, broaden your background as much as you can. I got an undergraduate degree in agriculture. I had taken all the courses for a PhD in environmental engineering. Just did an extra year. Now, if you look at it this way, one extra year in your life when you're young is nothing, is better than being miserable and not having the opportunities or the wide options for the next 40 years that you'll be working. So spend that time, but keep the economics in mind. And sometimes you can get it done at a master's degree and broaden yourself, but you should have more than one subject area that you can. Get a major, get a minor, get two majors if you can. Sometimes courses double up. You have to be in contact with the advisor on a regular basis. And some advisors are good, some advisors are not so good. You have to explain to them what your desire is, what you want to do. If you have to switch advisors, they don't get bad. You can go on to another advisor. But take every opportunity you have at the university.
Sagher, can I ask you a question
Sure.
about focusing? So, from your story, it sounded like you didn't have a focus to begin with, and then you found something that was interesting, you pursued that a little bit, and kind of things led to things. And I think that's a common theme that we've heard from others as well who have come on.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that I feel. I'm a parent to college students who are trying to figure out their path, and I can think back to my own time when it was not clear. People around me sometimes had very clear paths. They already knew when they came to college what they wanted to do, and it was very focused. I wandered a little bit, and it took me some time to figure out. Um, what do you do with that? Like, is that a fault? Should that person have somehow figured things out earlier? Or is this a natural process for how you find things, doors open, and as long as you're working and kind of pursuing that, that's good enough. What do you say to that for finding focus?
I would say if you had the experience and the knowledge as to what is going to be beneficial for you at the age of 16, 17, 18, you would pick a clear path, you'd be focused. Most people don't have that vision or don't know what other opportunities exist for them and don't know whether they can handle. Some people are good at math, some people are good at science, some people are good at art. Everybody is made differently. And so you have to choose what you think you're going to be happy with. There's consequences to that too, that you may have chosen the wrong field, but you have to also choose a field that will make you employable. So if you're going to be an English major, you still are employable. You could be a history major and still be employable, but then you need to build the skills of how you can sell yourself. And some of the skills that are absolutely essential, regardless of what your major is, or when you chose your major, or when you change your major, is communication. Written, oral, electronic. You need to master those. How you communicate and how you write stuff is very, very important. If you're a technocrat, you want to be a science major, and you don't know how to write, you don't know how to communicate your ideas, this is most important thing. It doesn't matter what your major is, doesn't matter what your career is. Take some classes, take some acting classes. Go and get an acting class just because that's a way of communicating and expressing yourself. You'll know how to do things in your profession and down your life. So for young people, I think sometimes it gets very confusing because, these peers of mine are doing this. And I respect that. So I'm going to be doing the same thing. Whether you're made for it or not made for it, you do the same thing. Then they have societal pressures, mostly family pressures. Your older brother did this and he did so well, but you are struggling. Don't compare. And parents often do this and try to push their child to be this or be that or be that. I think the parents should, if they want the child to be a physician, or the child does not want to be a physician, teach them there are a lot more options if you go in the health. They don't have to be a physician. The health fields have lots of jobs and they pay well. But they also, you also help them do the research. What kind of job you're going to get if you choose this field or that field or that field. And the parents have to be there. The professors are not gonna, they're not gonna tell you, come in this major or go in that major and do this or do that. You need to find out for yourself. The other thing is early on, freshman year, yeah, listen up. You need to be right now, today, if you haven't done this already, before mid-March, you need to try to secure an internship for the summer. And you might say, oh, I don't have the background to go work as an intern. Doesn't matter. There's people out there that will hire you. And being out in the real world, you'll see how things operate. And you now have something to put on your resume as well. And I used to run the internship program. And I would go visit every single student during the summer that had an internship. And that's how I found out what the real world problems were too. This is not consulting. This is a class. This is a course. The students had to come back and present what they had learned in the internship. These are all paid internships. So first year, if you cannot get one the first year, certainly the second year, because you only have 3 summers between your freshman, sophomore year, sophomore, junior year, and junior and senior year. Once you're a senior, then you should be looking for a full-time position. So if you can get 2, maybe 3 internships in your time, that would be best. One of them could be a research internship, and that could be right on campus first year. But here's what happens with the internships. You learn people skills because you're interacting with people of all kinds of life. And you also are given some responsibility, not a whole lot, and they're watching you. So you are being supervised very carefully. They want you to succeed because most internships that they offer, they want you to come back the next year because you're more productive next year than the first year. And you don't have to go back. You could take a different internship. But these people act as a reference for a job. If I were an employer, I would rely more on the internship supervisor for a reference and believe them more than a professor. The reason being, if the professor, you don't have much contact. You just go to the classroom, you come back from the class and you take notes. You may go into the professor's office a couple of times in the semester, and they don't know you. Whereas your internship supervisor knows you so well. Day in and day out, you're watching you, seeing you interact with people, they're seeing you, how well you do, and how polite you are, how humble you are, punctual you are, all of that. Every little bit is being watched. So that internship becomes very, very, very important. So that's another advice. Volunteer as many options that you are faced with. Become a tutor on campus. Become a discussion leader in a large class. You have discussion sessions, become a discussion leader. But you have to then communicate with the professor. The best time to communicate with the professor on the first day of the semester, first class, right after that class, you go in there and say, hey, I want to work with you. And they're going to be so impressed that you're approaching them as a freshman or as a sophomore to come work with them. Okay. And even if it's volunteering, that's fine. You'll then hook up with some upper level classmen, you hook up with the professor and other professors, you get an opportunity to present the information that you found or researched and so on. And professors are human beings. They're no different than your family. And you want to make them your family. And they will embrace you. Their goal is to make you succeed. And by the way, success simply means doing the best you can with the resources you have. So don't think you're a failure if you got only a small amount accomplished. That's success. And you just have to build on that. So internships are very important. Volunteer opportunities are very important. get as much hands-on experience as possible. When you do all of this, people will get a little jealous of you. It'll happen. And be humble, help them out so they can not have that feeling against you. And your reputation. Professors talk to each other. When you do good on that first test, you score 100%. It's talk of the town. And so, and then you can't mess up. Even if your answer was only partially correct, you'll get full credit. That's how professors' mentality operates. So you can, at first exam is first impression that you leave with the professor is very important. Because when I look at a class list, look at the scores people got, it's computer graded. When I see 100 on there or 100, wow, this kid must have really studied hard and learned the subject really well, right? And then they start to call upon you in the class to answer questions. Don't be shy. Even if it's a dumb question, you need to ask it. And if you have an answer, you may not have the accurate right answer. If you can come even close to it, the professor now recognizes you, that you are a person, not a number in the class. Especially in freshman year, you got this gallery of 250, 300, 400, some 500 students. The professor doesn't know who you are. You want to get to know those people. And it gets more and more important as you get up in the higher classes. And take as many classes as you can, broaden yourself, not just the minimum requirements of the major. That internship becomes very important. Volunteer opportunities, social clubs, professional clubs, take the leadership role. Volunteer to become the secretary or the president. And if you have the good communication skills, it'll be smooth. And all of those are resume builders. And getting a job after that is not difficult. The last word I want to leave you with is your reputation. You have to guard it 100%. Reputation is the opinion people hold of you. You cannot change it. You have to help them form a positive opinion of you, and that's your reputation. And that reputation is going to get you places. You can mess it up in one event. 99 out of 100 times, you're at your best. You lose your cool one day. Hey, that guy's a temper. Okay, so be careful. I'm not trying to scare you in any way. You'll do well. You have been brought up with good talent, good parents, with good ethics and good values. Those go a long way. All of these are Islamic values. Reputation is Islamic value. Humbleness is Islamic value. Honesty is Islamic value. Efficiency is Islamic value. Helping others is an Islamic value. And that's what you're doing. You're practicing it in the real world. So that I've been talking too much here. Let's open it up to questions again and see what. By the way, if you want to give them my phone number too, if they want to talk other things, I do a lot of financial stuff for people too, all gratis.
That's actually what I was hoping to talk about a little bit as well. But this is actually very good, what you've presented so far. But I mentioned to them in a text that I sent to them that so Sagher uncle also, like, he talked about his side hustle while he was working, but now he has kind of a retirement side hustle of
Yes.
Real estate, his own investing, and then advising other people, and retirement planning, and he's coached Yahya a little bit in like stocks and investing. And so if those are things that you all have questions on, he'd be a good person to ask. Or if you have something you want to share off the bat. We don't have so much time to get it, maybe to open it up right now, but if that's something that you all are interested in, then maybe we can bring him on again for that part of his activities.
One of the things when you get on campus, they will give you, banks will be there on day one, handing out credit cards. And if you haven't had one before you went to college, now you have one. A good percentage of freshmen fail, not because they're not capable of passing, because they have suddenly gotten freedom in their family. There's no supervision, and the bank has just given you a credit card. They have never used a credit card. They don't know how to use a credit card. It is a tool. It is not free money. The one moral I will give you here is do not ever get into debt because you have to repay that debt. And think of it this way, Allah, you've gotten a debt from Allah right now. The day you were born, you got a debt of time. And the time is fixed for you for your life. You need to do good to pay back that debt. They don't want the time back. Allah wants you to do good to the community and to your family and so on, and all Islamic values. And that's a debt. Now, the debt with the money can get you in big trouble as well. You know, if you don't do good things in that time that you've been allocated, you're going to pay for it sooner or later mostly. You may have some punishment sooner too, but you want to try to avoid debt. What the debt that Allah gave you over time, you need to use that efficiently. Likewise, if you get a credit card and that tool that you get is a convenience factor that you don't have to carry cash and you could buy things when you want. Whenever you buy things, you have to ask yourself the question, do I need it or do I want it? If you need it, buy it only if you have the ability to pay off that credit card the next month in full. Many people, let's say $2,000 limit on the credit card, and they rack up the expenses to $2,000. And the credit card company will tell you, oh, you only have to pay $30 a month. In your mind, you're paying the credit card company $30 a month. They're charging you 25% interest. You will never get out of that debt if you're just paying that $25 a month. Okay? So, only if you have the means to pay it off, when you get that statement, you need to pay it off. Your credit score is as important as your reputation. Your credit score determines how much your car insurance is going to cost you. Your credit score determines whether or not you're going to get the job or not get the job. Credit score determines how responsible you are. And you miss a payment on that credit card, your credit score drops. And employers, insurance companies, all check these credit scores. The other thing, I'm going to sidetrack here, Instagram, Facebook, minimize the use of that because you're just talking to a friend. You'll write anything, you'll send anything to them about your life. All of that stuff is being recorded somewhere. And employers will check your Facebook account and see what kind of a person you are. From the language you use, the topics you talk about, and so on. And as you get higher up in the positions, this becomes important. It doesn't matter when you did this, when you wrote this. So there's dangers to those kind of technology-related things. Pick up the phone, call. It's okay. Express yourself. But again, I can teach you a lot about money, and oftentimes in labs with my students, I would talk about money, talk about their personal finances, so on. And it's very important to understand how the world works. And if you folks have any questions, yeah, go to your parents first. But if your parents, you don't want to go to your parents, ask a question to me. I'd be glad to answer questions. But I would proceed with very much caution. That's how I raised my children. And alhamdulillah, they're doing well.
Yeah, I think we should we can close it out, but then maybe I'll invite you back over and we could talk about
So I want
the
money.
money especially and some of these other skills. Like the one skill you mentioned, communication, and you pepper through the talk some other skills as well. I think consciousness of money and kind of just learning how it works. But I think maybe something more practical, like what is the practical steps they can take to figure out, like to learn about money and
Sure. Yeah.
use it wisely, value it, things like that.
And even the people that are online here right now, if they have any topics that I think they want to have other people come and talk about on this very well organized series of interviews, they need to express themselves.
Yeah, they've given me some feedback, and we have people coming on, inshallah, to fill those
But
needs.
again, thank you very much for having me, and I hope I've fulfilled what you expected. And if I haven't, then I'm still available to come back.
Inshallah, thank you. No, thank you so much. This is very, very nice, and it was a
Thank you.
totally
Thank you.
kind of new area for most of the participants. They haven't thought about academia and teaching,
Yeah.
so it's good to get some exposure to it.
If you get in trouble about
Thank you.
course, give me a call back, and I'll show you ways on how to handle situations.
Okay,
Go ahead.
inshallah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Sagher uncle.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody.
Walaikum assalam.
Thank you.
Mhm.